In the works with Brandon and Usa.
Okay, nice to see you, Usa.
I see you too. There are a lot of cameras.
There are a
I
lot of
kind of got
cameras.
overwhelmed when I looked up.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. I mean, nobody's gonna notice except for when the screens change, and you could probably like flip through all of them right now if you're editing Usa. Go flip, flip, flip.
Future USA.
Yeah, future Usa. Um, but yeah, how you been? Been doing good?
Been pretty good.
Yeah.
It's been a month.
It has been a month since we recorded last.
Yeah.
Really, doesn't even feel like it. Well,
Really?
yeah,
I feel like it's been a long time.
probably because it's school. Was I in school, like in summer class when we recorded the last one?
You make it sound like you're not in summer school anymore.
I am, but was I?
Yeah,
At that? Okay.
because I was.
So I just started. Was it like week 1?
Probably.
Nice. Well, we just had our first test, so
Oh.
Yeah.
I've had multiple tests.
Yeah.
And I'm behind. I still have 11 assignments due Sunday night.
I feel that I have a problem set due on Monday, so gotta get that done.
Yeah.
But speaking of homework, it relates to exactly what we're talking about today, and that was kind of learning and more specifically study techniques. Now, I have always struggled with studying, and there's kind of ways I do it, but I've never really put any names to it, any specific procedures. When researching, I found there are things I do that are the same that I should be doing. But I also found that I'm a lot more inconsistent than I should be. And I also could be utilizing some techniques that I'm not. What about you, Usa? When you were researching, what did you kind of find there?
Well, I just went ahead and got like a basic view of
Mhm.
just like 5 different study techniques. And I pretty much just went ahead and just chose what kind of I've been doing just
Mhm.
subconsciously, I guess. Just because some things we were just taught in school, just naturally, I guess.
Naturally.
Not naturally, but like
Naturally.
it was just an easy way to learn a type of way to study.
Mm-hmm. There's
And
just something you did. Yeah.
It's
And
just
I know in high school versus college, the studying is different. I feel like in high school, there was less understanding going into it, I
Yeah.
would say. But then again, a lot of the classes didn't require as much understanding.
That's true.
It was a little more regurgitation.
I
type stuff.
definitely remember it was a lot of, hey, this does this.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
have you don't have to
It's
understand
only
why.
later in like, per se, math classes, they give you all these formulas in high school, and then you get up into calculus, and other things like differential equations, and you go, "Oh, that's where that came from. That
Mhm.
small little equation that we used all the time. Oh, that's where we're now studying it all the way up here and learning where it came from and why it is the way it is." I'm like, mind blown. But yeah, so let's kind of get started with these studying techniques. But I first kind of want to preface it with study techniques are great, but there are things you got to do to make a study session.
Mhm.
Because if you don't, then you're not really going to use the techniques anyway. So you got to make sure you are studying. And I kind of wanted to go into a little bit of a book we reference often, and that's Atomic Habits. I mean, we could just
I
briefly
felt like
do
we
it.
referenced that like once in a podcast.
It was like 3 times.
like separate.
Separate times, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe more. We always go, oh man, it's just a habits game, which that applies everywhere. And I want to avoid saying that all the time.
Mm.
But there are lots of practices in that book. I would suggest reading that book for a little more awareness on things. But I mean, just going off of what you remember from that book, as far as like habits and studying, I mean, what do you think? Because I think, first off, you have to make studying a habit. You cannot. Typically, you are not just going to go, I'm going to go study today. Because oftentimes, you want to do something else because studying is difficult. It can be fun, but getting into it is difficult. And sometimes it just sucks. Sometimes it sucks. The end result is great and you love it then, but it sucks when you're doing it. So, I mean, what can you remember from that sort of thing?
Oh, definitely.
Prepping the study space. stuff like
it's all really about consistency
that. Mm-hmm.
and just setting yourself up. Just understanding that every little thing that you do can and will add up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just,
What do you mean by that? Every little thing can and will add up.
I don't know if it was in the book, but it was compounding things.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I think it was actually the 2-minute rule.
Oh yeah, like if you can do it in 2 minutes, do it.
Honestly, I really don't remember what the
reread. Yeah, I should have
But
reread the book. But
what I'm talking about is basically just doing a little bit here and then doing a little bit the next day. And in the end, all those things will accumulate to something bigger.
Versus like one big
Yeah, exactly.
study session that you may or may not do.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I got you. Biggest thing that I would take away from that is make it easy. Make studying easy. Make it so that everything else besides studying, distractions, is harder to do than you're studying. And this includes prepping your space. That means like, where am I going to study? Am I going to study in my room next to all these things that I can just go and grab and do? Like say guitars on my wall or this little thing I could just fuck with until, I'm like, oh, I need to get back to what I'm doing. No. So go to a space where you're going to be comfortable, not too comfortable. You don't want to be falling asleep. Not uncomfortable because then you will be so focused on the discomfort that you won't study.
Yeah.
But something in between. You want a good solid space, removal of distractions, and you got to make it difficult to even get to those distractions. Biggest one being phone, right?
Yeah, definitely phone.
So what would you do with your phone?
I mean, nowadays, phones, I'm pretty sure Android has always had it, but they probably have a setting where you can just like do not disturb, just put that on, set it aside. You won't get any notifications. I know iPhone in like the past year, they have like different focus settings
Oh, yeah.
besides the do not disturb. So you can just let people know, hey, you're studying.
Mm-hmm.
You won't get notifications. And other people are informed that you are doing what you're doing.
Yeah. So that good way, keep that out of the mix because phone is like the number one thing right now that people get trapped with because people text you, people call you, you want to answer, especially if you think it might be serious.
Yeah.
And you think, oh man, I immediately got to respond. And then you kind of dive into that world. And oftentimes when you're in your phone, you'll then click on other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's always the death scroll where you get into an app that like TikTok or even Instagram now where you see something and then you swipe to the next thing and then you swipe to the next thing.
I think YouTube and Facebook do the same thing.
Yeah, I think everywhere has some sort of scrolling thing now. But pretty much the death scroll, you just scroll, keep going. Where did the day go? Oh, study session's over. I'm going to leave. Didn't get anything done. So just keeping that process, that loop out of the way, just not even going there is your best bet. Speaking of distractions, there's a cat doing weird things over there, which I can show you. But
before we get into the actual study techniques, I kind of want to go into what learning is. Like it sounds simple, but like what it kind of.
Could I interject one thing?
Yeah. Go ahead.
The space.
Go ahead.
Last thing before you get into that, determining what you are going to study. So going in with a plan, because if not, you may spend all your time figuring out what you want to do. I don't know. You may have figured this out in the gym. If you go into the gym without having a workout plan, you just there's more deciding what to do than actually doing it, right?
Well, I've gone for so long. I just kind of come up with one.
But say in the beginning, if you didn't go in a plan, you'd be like, what should we do today? I remember us doing that all the time.
Yeah, just wandering.
Yeah, wandering, going, and it's not really the most effective workouts and everything. But so same with studying. You might end up studying the wrong thing. Like, this is due on this day and I'm working on something else, but I didn't really plan this out. So I end up studying something when you need to be doing something else. Just making sure that you're prioritizing what you need to do and also blocking out time. So just make sure blocked out time, prioritize what you're doing, remove distractions. because I had here the when, what, and where. When, what, and where, or however you want to reorder those of studying.
You don't
So-
have the why.
I don't know. Sometimes you don't know why, but you just got to do it. I was thinking about why, but then I was like,
Uh-huh.
I guess. I don't know. I guess the why. Figure out the why you're studying.
And the who can just be
The
anyone.
who study. That
You
does
know,
matter
who,
when you
when,
get
where,
into
why.
groups, which I think we'll talk about later. But yeah, sorry. Continue. Before the actual techniques.
I just want to talk about kind of what learning is.
Okay.
I
What is learning? Do I do that?
don't know, do you?
I don't. Do I ever learn?
No, but basically it is just being able to make connections of certain things, A to B, making that connection, how they interact with each other, understanding the concepts, and just having your brain able to just retrieve information when you need it,
Mhm.
and
Or figure out
yeah,
information.
and then just apply it. It is not cramming information
Yeah.
inside your
It's
brain.
understand what is going on, right?
It's not. Yeah,
Or
definitely.
it could be cramming, if not cramming in the sense of cramming, but like say memorization. It can be memorization because sometimes you do need to memorize some things. Most things you won't
I will
necessarily
say
need to memorize.
that is a possibility. You can definitely cram things and memorize things, but you won't have much of an understanding.
Yeah. And I'm thinking like your ABCs. Why are the ABCs ordered in the way they are?
Mm.
I don't fucking know. You have to memorize that. And you end up memorizing that like when you're really young. So by the time you get to it now, it's no issue.
So, the brain is. You've heard people say like your brain is like a supercomputer.
Yes,
Right.
I've heard
So,
that.
so given that thought,
I tell people that.
the study techniques that we will go through are pretty much kind of like software that helps your computer, save that information.
It's processes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And pretty much, like I said, it's just all about connecting things, kind of like a web, all those threads in a web.
Oh,
You're just
yeah.
kind of connecting one thing to another thing.
Mhm.
And the better you have understanding these things, you will strengthen those threads. So you'll have a really strong, like spider web.
Yes.
So, you go through it once, it's very thin, it's very flimsy. If you go back and do it again, it'll just become a stronger thread. It'll
Mhm.
just become one thing.
And just saying, and most people understand this, but some who listen may not. Learning sucks a lot. Is fun, but the process of learning is hard. It is hard. It can be easy, but you actually have to dedicate yourself to learning. When you're younger, I guess since you're just like, your brain is just a lot more plastic all the time. You don't have to do specific stuff to induce plasticity. Learning is a lot easier. You just kind of absorb shit.
Yeah.
But when you get older, of course, you got to be more deliberate. And I could feel that now. Getting old, I'm 23, but I can feel the difference of learning when I was younger and now. I used to just be able to sit in class and just pick everything up and not study too much.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, okay, I have to participate in class and I have to study on the outside, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Because you feel that the material doesn't quite stick. But as you go through it again and again, it does stick more. So
Yeah.
just learning is not always an easy process, and it could make you angry,
Definitely.
make you flustered, but that stuff in itself is what's going to help you learn too.
Yeah. For the longest time, I've actually thought that I hated learning
Mm-hmm.
just because of all the studying and repetition and everything. But turns out I do love learning.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just things that I didn't really want to learn, that sort of stuff. And I definitely think having these study techniques just helped overall with wanting to learn what I want.
Yeah.
And just progressing in a way that I want to progress rather than just having things forced on me.
So for me, the thing that kind of blocked me from learning, because I love to learn things as well, it's for me, it's more of the setting, the study space.
Mhm.
I often am very distractible. I jump from one thing to another, to another, to another. Just even browsing the internet for things and like learning about, say, I'm trying to research an item that I might buy. Man, it is actually kind of a stressful situation because I'm like jumping through all these things and trying to learn everything I can about it. It's like, oh, geez. But all that, it's staying on point, on focus, going through the same thing. But once I get into that space, I love it because then you're just really developing this idea and this practice that that you're focused on, whatever your topic is, and you really just learning everything about it. And it's almost like developing a relationship with, your topic.
Yeah.
You're like, I know everything about you, and you're just in this headspace where all your brain and everything is just the material.
Yeah.
And that's where all those connections are happening. Then when you get out of it, you're like, wow, man, like
Well, I just had a whole relationship with this topic.
That's weird. All right. But I mean, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like you just now you understand it and you go about the world looking at things a little different.
Mm.
And then all you want to do is talk about it now. You just want to keep talking like, hey, I learned this thing. Or when somebody mentions that, you're like, by the way, and then they're like, shut up, please. Talking too much.
Yeah, you're annoying me.
Yeah.
I've heard this 10 times already.
Yeah. But sorry, continue.
That was pretty much it.
That was on learning right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can get into the techniques now if you want.
Yeah.
You want to? Shall I start?
Go ahead.
What's the first one you have actually?
Well, let me just list off all mine.
Okay.
I have active recall, spaced repetition, the Feynman technique, the Pomodoro technique, and mind mapping.
Okay. And then for me, I have spaced repetition, active recall, but I just listed it as recall. Something called interleaving, self-explanation, which that's Feynman technique. And then, I think that was it. So you have Pomodoro technique and mind mapping are not the same as mine. And I have interleaving, which one is not the same as
I will
those.
say I definitely didn't go in to the Pomodoro or the spaced repetition.
If I'm
just
not
because
mistaken, Pomodoro isn't something that you could really go too much in depth with, correct?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to focus on just a few. That way I'm not overwhelming myself.
Exactly. And the ones that we have overlapped are throughout my research, it was those three.
Just like super common.
Common. Every single sort of video or article I read about, learning or trying to study better, or it all had these in just some slightly different way. And it was just that over and over and over again. So apparently these three are just phenomenal, and it's really how you apply it to what you're doing that's gonna help you out. And the three are the spaced repetition, active recall, and self-explanation or Feynman technique. All right. So I guess we could get into, you said there was an order in which you do things typically. So maybe we could do that order just to maybe illustrate what it might be like going through a study session using these.
Okay.
We don't have to specifically do that. Maybe at the end we could tie it together and be like, okay, here's how it might go through. But I know you were like, I usually do this, this, and this. So we could start that. Start with that.
So the process I use to learn things is I usually go with the Feynman technique, and then I go ahead and do mind mapping, and then active recall.
Okay. So with the Feynman technique, Richard Feynman was a physicist.
Yes.
Like way up there. I think, did he deal with quantum stuff?
I did not look that much into him.
Okay. Yeah, it was something significant, and he made like a whole type of model and stuff that people use all the time now. It's Feynman diagrams or something like that, but in physics. And pretty much his whole thing was, if you can explain something to me in simple words, I'll be able to learn it and be able to do it right there. And I think he should have wrote this down, but I think he did that. He demonstrated that at some university or something where some dude, it's like, hey, explain this to me in simple language. And then he was able to pretty much do the problems or do whatever sort of material from that explanation in a very simple way, just to illustrate his point on that. And so what the Feynman technique is, I know what it is, but you choose a concept to understand.
Yes.
I like your confirmation there because you're like looking through your notes too.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, he's doing right so far.
Yeah.
Like, choose a topic.
You're doing great.
You're
So far.
doing great. Yeah.
You're doing great.
Choose a topic to understand. And the first thing you do, usually you do this on a piece of paper, maybe whiteboard, something else. But you write the name of the concept at the top of the paper. This is important because this is going to pretty much tell your brain, it's going to be like the little file names. If you're thinking about a computer, it's going to be the file names. You're like, oh, all this stuff is under torque or something like that. Or I don't know, what's a thing in your field that just
what do you want from me?
I don't know. But pretty much a concept that you would write at the top that would have a bunch of stuff under. You can think maybe I don't know, matrices, something like that, or a quadratic formula. Just
the closest thing
bullshit like
I can say that I've had in my classes that kind of relate to that are just file locations.
Oh no, I'm not asking you about file.
Okay.
I'm saying like you would write the concept at the top of the paper, right? And what would be a concept?
That's a good question.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't learned those concepts. I've just been learning.
Like in psychology, there might be like self-actualization, right? Or Maslow's triangle, hierarchy of needs. Yeah. So something like that. You write that at the top. That's your concept. That's what you're going through. And that helps your brain go, okay, file name. So that later you could go, oh, that's it. And we could just open this whole file, stuff like that. But second part of it is explain the idea to yourself as if you were teaching it to someone who didn't understand it at all. Sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not right.
And another caveat to that, use simple language. Don't get too complicated, but explain it to someone who doesn't understand it. So I might think, how would I explain this to USA? And then I would start going through that process. How would I explain this to USA? And whenever I get stuck on a place, I go, oh, how would I say, what is that? Like, I don't understand how I would say this thing. You're like, how would I describe this? That's a lapse in your understanding. And then you need to go back into your notes or wherever, internet, whatever, and you need to fill in that gap. And that's where you find what you need. You go, oh, that's what this is. That's what rotation is. That's what self-actualization, like this part of it is. And then you go, continue writing down, continue explaining until you can fully explain it. Once you can fully explain it, there's a second part to that, and that is to simplify it. Make it easy. Make it easy to understand that anyone could just read it. Take a complex sentence and simplify it so it's easy. And that way, your recall of it will be better, but also it's in simple language. You can understand it better. Other people can understand it better, things like that. Would you like to add anything on the process itself?
Not really.
Pretty much what it is.
You got it all.
Yeah.
And I will say, if you want to have a better understanding, you could just, I know people are around children all the time.
Try to explain it to a kid.
If a kid has a question, you're not gonna explain to him the hypotenuse of a triangle. You're gonna say like, yeah, when this point and this point, this line here.
Yeah, see how it's longer?
You see how it's longer? That's how far apart they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
the hypotenuse of a 30, 60, 90 triangle, and the kid's like,
what?
But I do know some things require a bit of understanding first. Like you can explain things in simple terms, but to understand even those simple terms, you might have to go back to get more context of what's going on.
Yeah.
And learn more. So that does happen. But for most things, you could pretty much explain it in a very simple way. Also, one of the great things about this technique is it's fantastic for transferring knowledge. So if you have written it out, explain it in a very simple manner, and you can rewrite this thing on a page and it's like perfect, golden, got it all, you can give that to your buddy for notes who's trying to learn it, and they'll go, oh, okay, didn't think of it like that before, and it might help them out. Or if you're trying to tutor someone, or if you're just trying to give people information, it helps the transfer of information. It could help people understand maybe what you're doing, what you're learning, and it helps you actually learn this stuff. So Feynman technique is very great for that sort of thing.
Definitely.
Okay. So second one that you would go into.
The second one I go into is mind mapping.
Okay. I don't know what exactly that means, so go for it.
It's exactly what it sounds like.
Isn't that what like scientists are trying to do right now? Map the brain? Okay, never mind.
No.
All right, mind mapping. Give it to me.
It is a visual tool to just organize and understand just complex information. And it's kind of like the web thing I was talking about, where you just kind of start with a central concept and then you just branch out into smaller sub points or just details about that.
So do you think that kind of goes like that almost is part of the Feynman technique? Like something you end up doing?
I definitely realize that a lot of study techniques, at least for me, just kind of, they definitely intermingle.
It's not something that's like, okay, you do this, then
yeah,
you do
they're
this.
not.
It's part of each other.
Yeah, they're not completely separate from each other. You do, at least I tend to have a little bit of each technique and then kind of, like you said, intermingle.
Yeah, but there might be at times more of a skewed thing, like I'm going to do this technique, and I'm going to do this technique.
But mind mapping is definitely more of a visual thing.
Okay.
And I would say it's more engaging to some people just because since it is visual, you can have colors, symbols, images, that sort of stuff.
So would that be, it would just be like connecting things that you already know?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. So you're just breaking it down into smaller details, and then it all comes back into that central idea that you started with. And everything that you learned on the outside of that, you know, it goes into that central idea. So you're just learning more about that.
Do you have, or would you be able to make an example of mind mapping about maybe something you know, or even something very simple? Because I'm trying to visualize that right now, because I kind of think I know what you're saying. But
so I want to say the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is like when I was trying to show you how to edit some videos.
Oh, yeah.
So main thing, editing videos, you can have a point that comes off is just trimming. And then a point coming off of that, what is trimming? Kind of just like taking notes. You can just have like sub bullet points or just details you want to add.
Or things about trimming, maybe some shortcuts, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so another one might be cutting clips and stuff like that, and how you would do that.
Yeah. And then you can have one for color grading, and then one for audio processing, just a bunch of different things. And you can even break it down even further.
I like how that's
details.
visual.
Yeah.
Because you could kind of follow the stem of it. Because I almost feel like it's similar to explaining, but it's okay, but not quite. You're not quite explaining it.
Not quite,
I can see how those, how Feynman technique and that can go hand in hand very well. In fact, you could even use mind mapping on Feynman technique.
No, definitely. What I like to do is use the Feynman technique, make it as simple as possible, and then understand why things connect the way they do.
So maybe make a bigger mind map and connect what you just did.
So it would be, for me, it would be simplifying it as much as possible and then stemming off from it while still keeping it simple.
Yeah.
Just so I myself
how
have
does
to
this
better.
connect to something
Yeah.
I already know? Like to me, I'm thinking about in my mechanics and materials class, it's like how does torque relate to, torsion, relate to stress, relate to strain, things like that. And how do those go hand in hand? What's different? How does one use another one?
Yeah.
Things like that. And just trying to connect stuff. Because in that class, it was everything kind of was interconnected. So this would almost be a perfect thing for that.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking in my thermo class, everything was interconnected too. So it's maybe that would be a useful thing for that class, is to be like, how does this connect to this?
That's a great way to say it. It's just how things relate to one another, and it's just all about the relationship.
And that's actually something I've been thinking about with math, because when I want to help people with math, like helping my girlfriend with trigonometry. So that's kind of at the forefront of my mind. How do I describe where something comes from and how it relates? Because I know particular practices, but like I said, when I got into higher math classes, then you kind of see where stuff comes from, and you're like, oh, that relates to this, relates to that. And I would like to better know those things. So it would be a good idea for me to maybe draw out a map like that, or get software that does maps like that.
Yeah.
And kind of write that out and try to figure out how different equations relate to each other. And so I could better get a grasp on mathematics, not just advanced stuff, but very simplistic stuff, so that I can then teach somebody efficiently.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, so that was that one.
That was that
you got
one.
anything more to add with that?
That one, no.
Okay. So what's the next one you usually do?
Right after that, I tend to do active recall.
Okay. Whoop, let me write that down. I'm keeping track so that you don't.
I get you. But yeah, with active recall, what I said earlier about what we're taught in school, that's one of the things that we just naturally learn in school, because that's how we're taught to learn. Yeah. And an example is flashcards. You look at it, you try and recall the information, you look at the answer. If it's wrong pile, right pile. And it's just that repetition of getting it and recalling the information you need to remember until you just have it all.
So this one was like the number one. I think this was like one of the number one learning things that kept coming across was active recall.
Yeah.
And it's, of course, actively recalling the information. And what does that mean? It's like you said, flashcards, you have to remember. The reason why it helps is because it forces your brain to work, to go, okay, what was it? What did I just say? What happened? And then you have to recall all your information, maybe even connect some dots, and then you could then put something on the paper, do something else.
Yeah.
And this is in complete contrast to looking over stuff. And that's kind of one of the biggest downfalls that now that I've seen from doing some research is for students. They review stuff, but they don't practice it. And active recall goes with practice. So they might go over like some quiz stuff, and they'll just look over it before a test, or look over it as they're studying. They'll just read about it and just look. You can't look. You have to actively retrieve that information, because when you look, it doesn't stick. When you have to retrieve it, it's telling your brain, this is important. I need to use it. Got to retrieve it. It can't just float away. Reviewing things, like looking over things, can be beneficial kind of as touch up, or just like figuring out where you need to be. But if you want to remember something, you want to get good at it, especially say for like math, or even like remembering things, flashcards, you have to actively recall. You have to pull that out of your brain and go, hey, I need to remember this, and then do that sort of thing.
Yeah. So other strategies for this, besides the flashcards, was just teaching someone, which we kind of already discussed.
Yeah. That's Feynman technique.
Yeah.
I love how these intermingle.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Just practice tests, schools do it all
Mhm.
the time.
I know for physics and math, biggest thing, do the problems.
Mhm.
Do the problems.
Oh yeah,
Problems,
definitely.
problems.
That's really important.
In fact, most of my engineering classes, they they give us a homework set, a bunch of homework sets for each thing,
Mhm.
and they're all practice problems, and they give you the answers. You're not being graded on whether you get the right answer usually. It's because they're pretty much like nobody should get 0 points
Yeah.
on the homework because you have the answers.
Mhm.
That's what they're saying. The whole point of it though is so that you can actively try to recall and that you're doing things correctly. And what they do is they'll typically put stuff you saw in the homework on the tests, change some numbers, maybe ask a slightly different thing.
Mhm.
So when you get to the tests, usually you don't see anything new unless it's like a math course. Math course it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But with physics and engineering courses, you'll usually see everything before.
Mhm.
And maybe even a verbatim problem with the numbers change.
Yeah.
And so if you were to just look over a problem, wouldn't really get it. But if you practice that problem, you would know exactly what to do.
Mhm.
And so it's one of those things where it's like you have to practice, practice, practice. You have to get good at it. Because I know a lot on my tests, the problem wasn't understanding the material. It's, do I have enough time to complete everything?
Yeah.
Because they give you everything you need.
Mhm.
Now you just need to perform.
That's exactly how my classes are right now, and I love it.
Yeah.
I just
You're
I
like,
can't get
I just
my
gotta
homework
do this,
wrong.
man.
I'm just thinking, is this right? Am I recalling this right? And then you just click the check answer button.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's wrong, you're just
Like shit.
man.
But that is a good thing. I remember hearing that when you get something wrong like that, it triggers your brain to, I don't know if the correct word is plasticity, but it pretty much tells your brain, okay, we need to change here. We need to remember some things.
Mhm.
So when you get something wrong, it's not a bad thing. It actually may help you learn.
Yeah.
In fact, they were saying with stuff like this, you want to be 85% of the time getting it right, 15 making a mistake. Not meaning you make mistakes on purpose, meaning that it's just challenging enough to where you're making mistakes 15% of the time, but you're getting it right 85% of the time. And that's about efficiency.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get to a point where you could do it all correct.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to do prepping for a test. But as efficiency goes for learning, 85% getting it right is what you want to be doing. Because then you're in that good zone
Mhm.
where you're not discouraged from getting things wrong. But you're not getting it right all the time to where it's like you're not even learning anything anymore.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an efficiency thing.
Mhm.
So yeah. So that's recall. Love recall.
The last strategy I have for that was just summarizing all the information. A big part that just triggered a memory in school for summarizing was the Cornell notes. Have you ever done
Oh
this?
yeah. I took Avid, so we did Cornell.
That
Cornell.
must have been annoying.
It was, especially because I never had enough time
Mm.
to do them right. Because I was with homework, I always took so long because I would think about things in my head for a long time and then write things down. I wouldn't just burn through stuff.
Mm.
And also I would get a little bit distracted all the time. So something that should have taken me 15 minutes would take me an hour.
Yeah.
So Cornell notes, I always was like last minute scribbling shit on there to get my points in Avid.
I hated the Cornell notes system, but
Yeah, because they don't
after
don't realize
years-
how it's useful.
Yeah, no, exactly. But after learning about how it is useful and it just clicked in my head.
And it's more useful when you're older because you don't pick things
Yep.
up the first time.
And that's something they don't tell you.
Yeah.
They just
It's like,
don't tell
yeah,
you.
you're
They
not
just
gonna need
do
it.
this.
Yeah, you're not going to need it as much right now. It's going to be a drag, man. Simple algebra. You may not ever use Cornell notes, whatever. But the moment you get to a harder class, the moment you start aging a little bit, getting closer to that 25, you're going to need them more and more and more and more. And
Yeah. That's
yeah.
what they don't teach you.
Yeah.
But
And keep Cornell notes on your tab for one of the techniques of why
Okay.
what works. Or I'll write it down. But continue what you were saying with.
I mean, that was really it. It just triggered that memory of using Cornell notes, how much I hated it, but realize how great of a system it is. You
Mhm.
write down your notes, you recall the information, you summarize it, and even then you're summarizing in your own words. So it kind of goes into that the Feynman
Feynman
technique.
technique. Yeah, Cornell notes are very good for a couple of reasons. So was that your kind of last one that week
Yeah,
overlapped? So I'm actually going to jump into one that I had that you didn't have because it relates to Cornell notes too.
Okay.
One of the reasons, and I learned this in Avid, one of the things I do remember from Avid, probably because they kept saying it over and over, and you'll see why that works, spaced repetition,
Okay.
meaning that you go over something, you wait some time, you go over it again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you keep doing this. And over time, it'll be a steep learning curve. You're not gonna always get it. You'll have to review it more and more. But over time, then it'll just be like second nature.
Is this the thing where people usually say just spend like 25 minutes studying, take a short break, and then get back to it? Or is that something different?
I guess on a micro level that might be it. But generally they're talking about days. Because you're going for the ability, like long-term retention. And this is why Cornell notes work. And this is what I was told in Avid. So you take your notes, right? You have your questions. You do all this stuff on the left-hand side. So you answer the questions, ask more questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you do that on a different day.
Okay.
So you review the material. You're taking the notes on the day you're learning it. Okay. That's one repetition. You wait a day or two or whatever you can do.
Yeah.
And you then you do the left side, all the questions, and you answer your questions, right?
Okay.
And then either on a separate day or on that day, depending your timing, you summarize. So what does this do? It gives you what is that? Not access, but it shows you the material. You've mingled with the material 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
So repetition is important. So 3 times better than 1, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that it's spaced out is what's going to give you all the power.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, they had a graph pretty much in it. It showed like when you learn something, your understanding is like way up high and then it starts to sink down low. But then you learn it again, it's way up high. But that sink down low doesn't sink as low this time.
Yeah.
And then it spikes up. And again, it doesn't sink as low and it goes for longer. And you could kind of keep going until you have this baseline understanding.
Okay.
One of the reasons I think, and I don't know if this is completely true, but I think it matters that it's between days is because of sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's recollection. That's when your brain consolidates stuff. I think it's deep sleep is when you remember details. And then REM sleep is when you make connections. I think that's true. Look it up if you want, but I think I remember that correctly. So when you're doing that, when you're sleeping, you're kind of consolidating information. And then you go over things again, and then you're reconsolidating, re-going over it in your head, and you keep going and keep going. So that's what would I say that was called? Spaced repetition. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do know that for flashcards or for particular skills, it might be skills, not necessarily flashcards. If you do something over and over and over again, take breaks in between that because during the breaks, your brain will do it faster. It's like 7 or 10 times speed.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember learning this when looking at some guitar videos, and it was like switching from chords, right? Switching from chords, like this chord to that chord, this chord to that chord, just practicing switching, when you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And they would say, do it a bunch of times and then stop. Take a break for like a minute and then do it a bunch of times and then stop. And that's your brain is going to be playing it faster whenever you stop. So it's going to help you out more. Yeah. So that might be more of a thing during the day and depending on what you are studying. But spaced repetition, when I learned it, was more about every day, every couple of days, stuff like that. And that's why one of the reasons why Cornell notes work. And I'm looking at this, it's kind of interesting how powerful Cornell notes could be. Thinking about, okay, it's kind of like a mixture of Feynman technique and spaced repetition.
Yeah.
And I guess it could be mind mapping depending on how you personally take notes. But I don't know, it depends.
I get you.
But that makes sense now.
It does.
Why it's powerful. Okay. So, all right, what was the next one you had there?
I mean, those were really the ones I kind of went over. I do have the Pomodoro technique.
Okay. What was that? I think I know, but
I can look it
look it
up
up.
real
Okay. I think
quick.
it was pretty much getting a timer, and you set the timer for like 30 minutes, and you work for 30 minutes, and then you rest for 10 minutes, and then you set the timer, work for 30 minutes, and rest for 10 minutes. I think that's what Pomodoro technique was. It was pretty much so you don't get so bogged down, you know? It's like, so you have focused bouts of work, you rest, you're like, okay, now I can, you know, get up, stretch, walk around, and then you could go back to a bout of focus.
Gosh,
If you're looking that up,
Go,
I'll go and talk about something else then, if you want. The next one I have is actually something called interleaving.
uh-huh.
So what that is the mixing of topics, units, or subjects. In quotation marks, they call it mixing it up. So instead of one thing over and over and cycling through it, you cycle through different topics and different problems. So what that would be is, say I'm doing a problem set in my physics class, and it's like, oh, here's a piston problem.
Mm-hmm.
Regular way that, or a non-interleaving way would be, I'm going to practice like 7 piston problems in a row.
Yeah.
Okay. Interleaving would be, I'm going to do a piston problem. I'm going to do a wheel problem. Maybe I'll do a piston problem that focuses on like torque or something, or velocities. And then maybe this one focuses on something else.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of mixing it up, switching through stuff. And why does this work? Is because it trains your brain to switch between concepts, to go, okay, we're doing this, now we're doing this. And also recognize concepts and recall the strategies. So it goes into active recall. So you're recognizing, okay, this is a piston problem. What do I know about piston problem? Now you're going through all the strategies. That's that active recall going in. And it just helps you out. I would say this helps you out on tests more, because on a test, you're not going to have 15 of the same problem, usually. You'll have a bunch of different problems, and your performance is based on, how can I look at the problem, analyze it, and do the strategies necessary to do it.
Yeah.
So you just kind of switch between. So this is a good one for like I was saying, for like physics and math and such. I don't know some other majors because I haven't really studied those things often. But I mean, I don't know how that would go through with like psychology. I don't know enough psychology to give an example. But yeah, it's something, switching from different problems or switching from different topics and identifying what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. All right. What did you get on Pomodoro there?
Well, I got a who, what, when, where, why, and how.
What?
Okay, so the Pomodoro technique, it's useful for anyone who wants to just improve their productivity and focus. What it is a time management method that breaks work into intervals, traditionally 25 minutes separated by short breaks. So I guess that's what I was trying to talk about earlier. Yeah. It's usually just used during study and work sessions. Can be done anywhere. Can help maintain focus, prevent burnout, and manage time effectively. And the how is pretty much what I just explained earlier.
Yeah. And I think that works because you're... Oh, okay.
Well, that's going to be in the recording.
Yeah. But I think it works because you're pretty much taking the stress off of how long am I going to be studying. You go, I'm going to study for 25 minutes. You study for 25 minutes, 5-minute break, stretch, get some water. Then you can go back and say, okay, I'm going to study for 25 minutes. So it allows you to push everything else out of your head and just go, it's just 25 minutes. I can study for 25 minutes.
I think this technique is also really good for kind of just for me, I guess. Yeah. Just, I'm someone who gets super focused on what I'm learning and just can keep at it for hours.
Yeah.
Like 3 hours.
And then you're like, now I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. And then I'm burnt out. and I
Gotta
don't want to
nap the
do it.
rest of the day.
Yeah, I don't want to do it the next day or the day after. I'm just burnt out on
So it
it.
helps you just kind of like, okay, we're
Yeah.
doing it. Chill. Okay, get back into it. Chill.
It's just, for me, it's like a friendly reminder of just, hey, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself. Drink some water. Stand up.
I also hear that your focus cycles in 90-minute cycles. So I wonder how the Pomodoro technique would fit in with that fact. So I'm not sure how that would work with that, but it would be interesting to see if there's a connection there. I know Pomodoro would help me in the sense that it's not that I would go too long, but for things that I know I'm going to hate, like looking at my problems and it's like multi-step and you're just like, you can go, okay, just do the problem for 25 minutes. Yes, it'll take you an hour, but just do it for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you go down and you do it for 25 minutes. And you're like, okay, I'm not quite done. I'm going to take a break. I know what's going on though. Now I'm going to come back 25 more minutes. Because other than that, you're like, this might take me an hour. This might take me 2 hours. This might take me 15 minutes. I don't know. It just seems like a behemoth and I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it could help me with that. Although one problem I could see is during those 5-minute breaks, what are you doing? Because that could be a little section on where you get distracted and it takes you away from your studying. That could be a little break where it's like, you take a break, yeah. But then you walk by a TV and it's a show you really like and it's funny and you just end up sitting there laughing and you're like, you know what? I really want to maybe, what actor was that in there? And, something like that. Or you end up sitting down watching it, or you see a YouTube video, or you open your phone, get TikTok and do a death scroll. Like, you don't know. So make sure, I guess, that you're protecting those 5 minutes as well. That your break is truly a break and it's not something that you're starting something else, getting distracted by something else. Yeah. Let it be a break. Okay. So is that all you had over there?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Last thing for studying, I want to say, is groups. Study groups, studying in groups. You can do all of these techniques with groups. Groups could be very efficient. And the reason why is you're not always going to get every single detail at all times. Somebody else might, though. And it just expedites the time of figuring something out.
Yep.
So you may be sitting at a problem for an hour and just like, I can't figure it out, right? I'm not going to do it. If you were in a group, maybe your friend was like, oh, dude, it's just this. Or they ask a question, which I guess we should have went over like a Socratic method. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much asking questions or allowing somebody else to come to their own conclusion about something. So pretty much guiding them through thought so that they can come to their own conclusion. Better learning. But yeah, so maybe they ask a question, you're like, oh, how did I not see that? And now you've saved all that time and you still learned that thing now because now you know how to identify it and you can do more problems or whatever in a shorter amount of time. That's really efficiency and stuff like that is why I like working with people. Also because you do like Feynman technique stuff. You explain it to others. If you're like, oh, I figured it out, guys. I know what the answer to this problem is. And they're like, what? You're like, then you go and show why it is the way it is. And if you don't understand, then everybody goes and looks it up. They're like, why would that be that? And I remember this in school with calculus in my physics class. We'd be doing different problems. And it'd be like, hey, I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do this one. And whenever we get stuck on another one, we'd help each other out. Sometimes we'd do the same problem and we'd both not know exactly how to do it. And it'd be like, okay, you tried this method. I'll try this method. And so it ends up being a time saver. And then we explain our methods to each other. And then whichever one worked, we see why it worked. So it's kind of a combination of a lot of these techniques if you do it properly. Sometimes people just kind of sit next to each other and do their own work. Maybe that helps you get out and study, but you got to be careful with that because you may end up just socializing, which that's a big problem when you get into groups. Sometimes you just end up talking and not doing work. So that's what you got to watch out for because groups are phenomenal or they're the worst thing to ever be a part of. So just keep that in mind while you're studying. And I'm kind of excited to see how I'll use these in the upcoming school year and even this right now. Um, the only problem is time. Like, how do you do this stuff fast? How do you do this efficiently? And I guess that just takes practice. I don't know. But
Yeah. I think it's just having your own system, what works for you.
yeah, trial and error. See how you can apply these things. Maybe Cornell notes don't work for you. Maybe they do. I just know my teachers print out notes for me because they don't want you rewriting all the questions, rewriting all the material, rewriting the pictures because it's just so much. So they'll either print out or have them so you can print them out. And so really what I do when I'm doing those notes is I'll write questions while I'm taking notes. But
I thought that was the way you're supposed to do it.
yeah, there's both. So you write it while you're doing it. You'll either write the question. It's like, what is this? And then pretty much the answer will be the topic and the stuff underneath. But you can also use the left side to answer the questions, like to review, to go, okay, I'm going to ask myself this question. It's like flashcards. Some people will even full crease the page on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll ask themselves the question and flip over whenever they answer in their mind. Oh, it's this, and this. Flip over. Did I get it right? Yeah. So they use it as flashcards, but also you could go back and ask more questions. So it depends. But yeah, I'll just ask questions. I'll be like, what is this? How does it relate to this when I'm doing my notes?
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't really summarize, but that might be something that I should start doing. Maybe even on a separate page, or pull out sheet of paper, do the Feynman technique thing, make that my summary. So,
all right. Do you have anything else?
I mean, not really. Oh, notes. Depending on, I saw a thing. I didn't get too much into it, because we might use it on our next topic, which I think is some self-learning stuff. I don't remember if that's what we decided.
I don't remember.
But we may hit it on another day because, this is already like an hour. So, and I didn't research it too much for that reason, but it was about taking better notes and how much that could benefit you in the long term. So not just like in school in one class, but in life when you're trying to learn about something, when you need to go back and reference something because it's been a couple years, or if you want to make connections to a lot of things you're working on. And I was listening to a particular individual who has kind of based his career around this, and he's made a website that, gets a conglomerate of tools and like programs and stuff, and kind of teaches people how to use them to create this ecosystem of notes that will benefit them. Just in general, like on particular topics and just in life, just being able to connect stuff.
Yeah.
So how you take notes is very important. What you do with those notes are very important. Because I know sometimes I take notes and I never see them again. Ever. Even when I try to relearn stuff, my notes aren't good enough. So notes are important, but these strategies are very important too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I didn't include the notes thing because, again, a lot of teachers now will put the notes online, or they'll let you print blank notes, or they'll give you notes. So your written notes are not always like, to me, I don't bust out a sheet of paper and start taking notes.
That's crazy that teachers now just post notes online, because in high school
it was like, do you want the notes?
You have to learn how to take notes.
Yeah.
You have to do it fast. You have to do this. You have to do that.
And I guess in life though, nobody's going to post their notes. It might be better in long term to learn how to take notes. And I think this guy also teaches that. But in general, for school, I have not had to bust out a blank sheet of paper and take notes.
Yeah.
At all. If I did do that, it was because I didn't print out the notes. So that's really the only thing there. But yeah, I think I'm done there.
Yep. I got nothing else.
Yeah.
So remember to like, comment, subscribe. leave us a good rating on Spotify. Is that how Spotify works?
No idea.
Because I know iTunes does the whole rating thing.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I'd say definitely comment. I want to see people comment.
Yeah.
So Revive,
Comment more.
yeah. I wonder if Gabriel still watches. Gabriel, if you watch, comment.
Comment. Our socials
We don't
for
really
the
post
podcast
anything.
are in the description.
We
So
will sometime.
You can find it in description. Make
We'll
sure
do better.
I've been trying to work on some TikToks.
Oh, really?
I can get more stuff going on.
Yeah, because right now we're trying to develop a portable setup. He's trying to streamline video stuff, editing as well as recording, and we want to get a portable setup so we don't just have to do it here. So maybe we can go to where guests are and have more guests.
Pull people off the road.
Yeah. No. Hey, you. Hey, man. No. Yeah. But yeah. So we're trying to get a little more efficient at things slowly but surely. I know we're both really busy, and this podcast kind of takes a backseat, but we want to continue to do better so that whenever we flip the switch, we can go hard and it be not so difficult.
Yeah. I want to thank, people who watch and listen to our podcast and even our live audience right now.
Live audience right now.
Because we haven't had a live audience since
the cat.
Like maybe episode 38. Maybe.
The cat. Yeah.
Maybe episode 20 something. It's been a while since we've had a live audience.
A cat.
Yeah.
Miko Cam.
So
Switch.
thank you for coming to our show.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching.
Hopefully we'll definitely get people on, because I know I enjoy talking to people, and that's really one thing that I wanted to do more on this podcast, and we just haven't had the setup for it. We haven't had the time, and also finding people that will come on to a podcast that's not popular yet.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a little harder. So you'll probably see a bunch of friends before you see strangers, which is not a bad thing, I'd say.
All right.
Yeah. You guys have a great day. Study hard, study smart. And I guess we'll see you next time.
Yep.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you for watching In the Works by Brandon Nusa. Subscribe and like for more.